Hi, welcome to the latest edition of Our Franklin. I'm your host, Jamie Hellen, the Deputy Town Administrator, and we're really excited to have a great program for you today. We have with us retiring Town Treasurer Collector Jim Dacey and the recently appointed Treasurer Collector Kerri Bertone. And we thought it would be interesting to have a fun conversation between outgoing treasurer and talk some stories and talk some of the old stuff from the Dacey family and talk about a little bit about Kerri's background and what she brings to the team. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here. So Jim, I got to first ask, what's it feel like to be retiring within the next few weeks?
I'm so excited about it. My wife and I both retiring.
Yeah.
She's the assistant treasurer in Rentham. She has about another 4 weeks to go.
Mm-hmm.
We plan on traveling. We plan on spending time with the grandkids, and I plan on playing a little bit more golf than I have been.
Which, given the amount of golf that you play now, I have to assume that you're going to be golfing quite a bit.
Twice a week instead of once a week.
That's
right.
That's exciting. So, that's looking forward.
Sure.
But, looking back a little bit, you've obviously lived in Franklin your whole life. You have a long history here.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how long you've been working in town government. I know you've also volunteered for a long time, but tell us a little bit about your past experience here in Franklin.
So, my family owned a chain of stores at one time, the Dacey Brothers Dairy Stores, and we had stores all over the South Shore. And I worked, after college, I worked in the business until 1999 when I was elected as Treasurer Collector.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was appointed to the Finance Committee
Mm-hmm.
in 1989. So I've been involved in Franklin finances for the past 28 years. So I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of different people over the years.
Yeah.
Worked with 4 different town administrators in that time. It's been a very great experience for me. I really enjoyed it.
I think as I, have gotten used, in Franklin for the last couple of years, there's no question the town is much better off today than when you started 27 years ago or 20 years ago as town treasurer. And I think when we look at what we do in local government sometimes, we get into the nitty-gritty, we talk a lot of government talk, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, for the average resident and for the folks who are new to the community, who are moving here in the last 5 or 10 years, one of the things that really at the end of the day, this town is a lot better off now than when it was when you started here. And that's got to feel pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I know
great.
you've had a big role in that. I know a lot of other staff have had a big role in that. But, as you look back, are there a couple things that on the top of your head that you think of as really great accomplishments or things that you're really proud of?
Well, when I first started, our bond rating here was single A plus. Yeah. With Standard & Poor's. It's increased 3 times in the past 18 years, and I'm proud of that. That's the work of a town council that knows how to reserve money long term, and a town administrator who's been very proactive mm-hmm. with capital projects and keeping all of our infrastructure up to date. Mm-hmm. We worked on, in 2001, worked on a plan that pretty much repaired or replaced a number of buildings, mm-hmm. and we were able to do all that within the budget and not have to do overrides, except for schools, right. which mm-hmm. were a big dollar item.
Those are big dollar items. Those are always going to have debt exclusions with mm-hmm. them. But you're right, and we got to peel into the weeds because we're government officials, so we have to go. What does it mean to have a good bond rating? I mean, we hear that, it's like a good mm-hmm. credit score almost for mm-hmm. your own personal family. But I think one of the things that a lot of folks don't always understand is the monetary piece of a good bond rating and why it's really important to have a strong bond rating. Not just to have it because it feels good, but that there's an actual there's a cause and effect on the other side.
Right. There's an actual savings in right. Interest with the better bond rating. Yeah. We're at a AA plus, but whenever we have borrowed in the past few mm-hmm. years, it's always at AAA rates. Mm-hmm. So even though we only have a AA plus rating, we're still getting the benefit of a AAA rate with our bond issues.
Right.
So, you know, we're paying about as low an interest as we can. Now, the other thing we've done is 5 times over the past 7 or 8 years, we've refunded old bonds, and for a savings of $2.9 million in interest costs over the remaining life of the bonds. And that's mostly because interest rates have been dropping a little bit, but the good work of our financial advisors who help us out with the borrowings.
But then again, I think you're right. It's, you know, for the folks at home, you know, that saves millions of dollars of taxpayer property tax money that would otherwise we could spend on other things, really.
That's right.
And you know, you hit on a note a minute ago, which I think, coming from our business as town managers, you know, we certainly have a lot of colleagues in other communities, and I think one of the things that most town managers are envious of in Franklin is the infrastructure and the facilities. And I know certainly the town administrator Jeff has prioritized all that. The town council for 20 years has prioritized that. But being able to do this, having a high bond rating, really allows us to invest in a lot of those facilities.
That's right.
Right. And you know, and I think that as you see this today, when we all talk to constituents that come into the door, when we ask them why are they here or why did they move here, you know, schools are always the #1 reason. But it's the senior center, it's the library, it's the recreation building, it's the town hall. It's all of those things. So obviously, all the hard work that you've been doing for a long time has played a big role in that.
Part of a team.
Part of a team.
Yep.
Very modest, Jim. So, you know, going back a little further, you know, tell you know, the audience a little bit more about the convenience store. For a lot of the folks at home that have known you and have lived in Franklin for most of their life, they obviously know about the convenience stores.
Yeah.
I think number one, for the folks that have lived here their whole life, they'd love to go back to that moment for a few minutes to your memories of the convenience store. For the folks who have moved into town recently, they have no idea their treasurer was running those convenience stores. So give us a little history on the convenience stores.
My brother and I ran Dacey's Market on Lincoln Street from the late 70s, 1980 maybe, until, and at that time we converted a dairy. It used to be Dacey Brothers Dairy. We bottled milk in there.
Really?
Yeah.
In that same store that's
in that same building, yes. My father built that in 1947.
Wow.
I live in the house that he built.
Yeah.
I still live in that same house next door to it. But he built the dairy. He bottled milk. He was one of the first in eastern Massachusetts to offer milk by the gallon.
Wow.
And
it's probably glass gallon jugs?
Glass gallon jugs, yeah.
Wow, can you imagine that?
And he opened up a small store in the corner. It was a storage room that he cut a door in the front and put in some refrigerators and started selling milk by the gallon in the late 50s. He had a visit one day from a guy from Cumberland, Rhode Island named Jim Hasiotis, and said, "Hey, this is a great idea." And he went back and started Cumberland Farms. He got the idea from my father.
You know, it's so interesting. You know, it's just, you know, growing up, obviously not in Franklin, but certainly in the 495 region, agriculture and dairy were huge parts of the economy up until, I mean, it still is almost today, but it really was, you know, pre-495 era. Was such a massive part of the economy here. When you think about it, Gorelick is here, Cumberland, Rhode Island, right over the border. You know, you have Cumberland Farms, and you have all these family dairies. You know, where were the cows?
Yeah, right.
I mean, you know, it's just unbelievable. You know how much of an impact that was.
Yeah, but the old family farm was further down Lincoln Street, which is now Dacey Fields.
Which is now Dacey. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's when my father was born.
Okay.
Right
So
about
that's
where the playground is there.
Wow. I mean, I knew that the name was there for that reason, but I didn't realize the cow. That's where the pastures were essentially were, right?
Yep.
Oh wow. And so, what year was Dacey Field built?
You have to ask me the tough question like that. I don't recall. I know the town bought it
Yeah.
in the mid-90s. And I think it may have been in the 2000s, maybe 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
The fields were, they began construction on the fields.
And so, you know, when you were running those markets and you were in the daily, what got you interested in being on the finance committee?
You know,
I mean, you're a numbers guy, right? You're
Yep.
a business owner, but, you know, all of a sudden you decided in the late 80s.
I had people coming into my store and saying, "You have to run for town council." I said, "I don't want to run for town council." "You have to run for town council." I said, "No, I don't want to run for town council." And finally, there was an opening on the finance committee. I said, "You know, maybe I'll do the finance committee. I'll apply for that." And I could still hear when the council, there was 17-member council at that time, were talking about appointing me. And my name, I was at home watching it on TV. The old police chief, Arthur Pellegrini, was, saw the name and he said, "Oh, Jim Dacey's a fine man. I've known him for many, many years," and on and on and on. And somebody said, "This is his son that's being appointed, not the father." "Oh, well, he's a good guy too."
So you went from the finance, so you did the finance committee for almost 10 years, right?
10 years,
and so I assume that generated a little bit of your interest in, you didn't want to run for town council, but then all of a sudden you ran for something else.
Well, what happened before that was the Charter Commission came along in '94, and I ran for that. And I became chairman of the Charter Commission. I was the top vote getter, and that made me realize that, in a town-wide election, I could probably win if something came up. And I was friends with the brother-in-law of the outgoing treasurer collector who was leaving, and he said, "You'd be perfect for that job. You ought to run for it." And so I did. First time around, I lost by 50 votes.
What do you mean? First time you ran?
First time I ran.
Really?
It was an unexpired term. It was an 11-month term.
Oh, okay.
So I said, 50 votes is just way too close. I'm going to run again. And so the incumbent had only been there 11 months. I beat him the next time around, and I've been there ever since. So that was in November of '99.
And how many votes did you beat him by?
350.
350. So even within that 11-month time frame. So it's interesting to me that you were on the finance committee, and then it kind of almost galvanized a little bit of your interest in town government.
It did. I learned a lot.
And you learned a lot.
Yep.
And that was during the phase where Franklin was the fastest growing community in Massachusetts, if not one of the fastest growing communities in the country.
It was.
And so making a quick transition, that story seems to be somewhat similar for the person who's going to be your successor.
That's right.
Kerri, I know when I started, you were on the finance committee.
Yep.
And that obviously galvanized some interest in government and being involved too. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your interest in government and your backstory about how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm not born in Franklin, but I have been here, for over 30 years. My father was transferred when I graduated high school, and he worked at Stone & Webster in Boston. So we were looking for towns that were near the commuter rail for him, so that he can get right on the train. So we moved to Franklin, which is, as you know, great location for anybody, getting into Boston. And I started my family here in Franklin and got involved with, my children in coaching soccer or, teaching at CCD and always liked being a part of the community, and I just liked the sense and the feel of the town. So as the kids got older and I was working at Putnam Investments in Franklin, which was I couldn't ask for. Things just all kind of worked out there because to have small children, but be working at Putnam Investments, working in town, and building my career, I didn't have to sacrifice. I was still, because I had so many different shifts, that I was able to work in the evening, and then as I got older, I would add more time, and then there was even a period of time they were very big work at home. They pushed that program, and I did that for many years. So that all worked well, and they did move to Andover, and I did go with them because I felt that they were so good to me that it was time to give back, So I made the commute, and I was always always on Franklin's website, always got involved in Franklin Matters. I signed up to receive that, always looking at the Country Gazette, and followed, and eventually Twitter came out. So I would follow Twitter, right? And I
Social
saw
media.
the ad, I saw the posting saying the Finance Committee is looking for volunteers. And I was like, that's it. That's my next phase. You know, it's not
Civic, basically
Exactly.
civic volunteerism almost, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
it was like this is it. This is what what I can do. It didn't require a lot of time because the commute was long, but it was, you know, definitely manageable. And I thought this could be the start, you know, of something more, and could be the next phase of my personal life and my career. So I contacted Jeff, and we spoke on the phone a little bit, and then I wrote a formal letter, and I met with Mr. Valley, because he was the chairman at the time and the chairman of the Finance Committee, and we had a conversation, and I was appointed, and that's when I really, you know, I'd take a ride and be like, oh, okay, that's it. And that's what they were talking about the other night. And, oh, I see what they're doing. And I learned a lot about the stabilization funds. And I was also, as I was getting more involved and liked it, I was also part of the budget review where the treasurer came and spoke, Mr. Dacey, about his succession planning.
Yeah.
And they were putting in the budget to hire an assistant treasurer collector because they were going to retire in a few years. And I thought, this is it.
This is a good opportunity.
This is a good opportunity.
Yeah, a little light bulb went off.
Exactly. And I couldn't not go for it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know, do you have enough time? And I knew that it wasn't elected.
Yeah.
Because if it was, I don't think I'm as popular as you are.
Well, you never know. You know, elections are interesting things,
Right.
and you know, I think if there were people out there like myself who could predict these things to a T, I'd be a very rich guy,
Right.
you know, living in Hawaii or something right
Yeah.
now. But you made that transition
I
from
did.
the Finance Committee. You know, obviously applied and came into the office, but obviously being on the FinCom. Piqued some sort of interest. And
Yes.
you were already working in the financial
Yes,
industry anyway.
I was.
For the last,
21
if I recall,
years.
21
Yeah.
years. So it's not like finance was something that, like mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
It's not like finance,
right.
right? That, you know, you already had a background
I
in
did.
finance.
And prior to Putnam Investments, I worked at EMC Corporation in Hopkinton.
yep.
And I worked in the, I worked for the, I was in the CFO and the finance facilities manager, so I was the administrative assistant in there. So again, finance, accounting, numbers, building, structure, you know what I mean? All that was something I was exposed to, and then I took it again to another level with Putnam because I managed a team and control. So I knew what it was to keep things in balance. I knew what it is to have a bond and buy and sell bond, you know, that kind of thing. Debt, exactly.
And so, you know, you've been working for a little over a year with both Jim and Sandy Fanning, who, you know, and really the whole staff in your office. You've been very fortunate in the treasurer's office. With Barbara and Patty and the whole team, and Jill was there for a long time.
Yep.
You've had a pretty consistent staff,
Right.
And I think, you know, as a manager, you know, that's something that I think is a value that is a little less underestimated than it has been in the past. That I feel like almost younger generations jump around a lot, but from a management perspective, having a consistent, strong team for a long time is a really, really good thing in our line of work.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you've been in there and Sandy's been with the town for obviously a long time, the whole staff has, but as you've worked with all of them, not just Jim, but the whole team, you know, what do you see, you know, over the next few years or 5 years as some of the challenges in your office? We know some of the financial challenges that Jeff and I and the superintendent talk about coming down the pike in the next couple of years. But, you know, looking out a handful of years, what do you think are some of the challenges in the treasurer's office that we'll have to try to accomplish?
So I think the team is great, and because they're so strong and what Jim and Sandy have done over the years, it's built such a great team that I was able to learn their jobs from them and then learn from Jim. And now, as I transition into the much bigger role, they are so solid.
Yeah.
and it's a great manager's, an operation manager point to have. I don't have to dig deep right now to their level because they're so good. And because I've been there for a long time, there will be change, there will be transition when they're ready to move on. So I just always have to keep in the back of my head.
They're going to retire?
Yeah.
People want to retire?
I know,
yeah,
people want to retire, and they want to be with their families, and the grandchildren are now a big part.
I see the gleam on Barbara's face every time, every day.
Right.
I see the smile on her face, and I think, she's probably sitting there dreaming about her grandkids a little bit.
Can't wait to see them, and then that's wonderful, and they should be able to do that, and they've worked very hard
to do that.
So some of the things the challenges is, as you know, not things are changing, but there's more ways to pay online. There's more convenience, which, we are there one night till 6, and then Jim already began being able to set up on our Town of Franklin website to do online payments. So what I do is kind of now look to maintaining that. How can we do that better? How can we expand it maybe a little bit more, but still keep that face-to-face time when you have a question or a concern. You can come in and speak to somebody, and any one of the girls comes up to the counter. They are so knowledgeable.
Yeah, they are.
And they listen, and they understand that you're upset and this is frustrating, so they'll resolve it for you.
They're a group with big smiles, and that's always very warm.
Yeah. They're the face of right when they walk in.
That's right. They are the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
You're right. Those are going to be some of the challenges I think Franklin's going to see in a lot of the different offices, but I think in your office in particular too is some of the transitions of just generally anticipated retirement over the next 5 years, and so, anything else that you can think of more on the, outside of that and some of the customer service things, financially, as Jim mentioned before, Franklin's in very good shape.
Yes.
Obviously, there's going to be some budget issues in the next couple years, but he's left a pretty good foundation to build off from.
Right.
As I always frequently say, it's really pretty easy to go from bad to good. It's really hard to go from good to great.
Correct.
And I think that's I think that is going to be one of the challenges, moving forward, with just the debt schedule, our investments, OPEB.
Yep.
Is probably is going to remain a critical challenge.
It is. And that was
in the future.
That was always talked about with the finance committee. That was always right. That was the
I'm
main.
sick of hearing about OPEB. That's one of the reasons
You're going to be in
retiring.
OPEB now. I know. For the folks at home, OPEB.
Right.
Here we are with our acronyms. It's other post-employment benefits, which is really mostly retiree health insurance. As the baby boomer generation retires, the population spike goes up, and therefore the town pays that premium.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
portion of the premium.
of the premium. And we've been trying to save up some money. But I think the investments in those will be some challenges moving forward, and certainly the budget cycle as we go. So, y'all have been working together for the last year and a half. Why don't you tell some of the audience, Jim, at home, why Kerry, and what's been your experience working with her for the last year plus, and moving forward? When
we interviewed people for the assistant position, I believe we had about 65 applications, narrowed it down to maybe 7 people to interview. Some of them were already in-house. And when we came back for the second interviews, it was a slam dunk for Kerry. She was just so knowledgeable. You could tell that she had done her research, she had done her homework, she knew a lot about what was going on in the treasurer's office before she even set foot in the door. And we just knew she was the right person. Training her, she's like a sponge. She absorbs it very well. She takes notes like you wouldn't believe.
I've noticed.
Yes. I say, all right, I'm going to tell you about this. And she says, wait a minute. She opens up the notebook and starts writing.
Right.
Slow down. And, so she's been a great student, and she's going to do great. She's going to do wonderful.
One of the things
and I've told her, I said, anytime you need help, just give me a call. I'm always there. except in the middle of a backswing or a putt.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Nope. I'll be around.
You're right down the road.
Yep.
Right.
And one of the things I've been impressed with is we've talked about before, and you know, is there's so much institutional knowledge. As someone who's come in the last couple of years and you know, have been trying to work a lot with Jeff on the succession planning in all of our departments.
Right.
You know, one of the things that a lot of folks have is just so much knowledge, institutional knowledge, and I think Jim and you and I have joked about it. There's some, you know, couple hundred passwords and accounts and operations, and you know, I think folks, for the folks at home, I think, you know, one of the great things about having this kind of succession planning that we're doing in a lot of these departments is the folks who are coming in like Kerri are doing the operational manuals and doing some of the stuff that's put down about how we're doing procedures. How have you been doing it so it's down on paper. So if anything does happen, you know, for any reason, you know, we know the path forward from the folks like yourself and Jeff and Chief McCarraher and Chief Submersion, you know, all the different department heads. They were laying the groundwork and having the documentation of it. That's really, it's not as easy as people think it is to do.
No.
And there's a lot that goes on in your office.
That's right.
You know, I have to ask now that I'm thinking about it, you know, you have to, people come in and pay their tax bill.
That's
They
right.
pay their excise bill. But tell us a little bit more about, you know, both of you, what is it that the Treasurer Collector's Office does? I mean, you take money in, you put it out, but there's a lot more sophistication that goes on in this job than people really think.
You know, when I think back when I first started, there were two ways you could pay a bill: cash or check. And that was it. Nothing online, no credit cards or anything like that. Now people pay online. They have online banking that they can pay. We just started, actually just today, accepting payments electronically with people who pay using online banking. And that's, we're going to hopefully crawl before we walk with that. That's a new, something new that Kerry really pushed for to get done. We bill out taxes. We bill excise tax bills.
How many bills a year?
115 to 20,000, somewhere
115 to 120,000 bills
in total.
a year.
That's
In
water,
year.
sewer, trash,
Right.
excise, personal property, real estate. And we do have a great collection rate on real estate and personal property. It's around 99.5%.
It's pretty darn high.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
but eventually it gets to 100 because we don't forget. You know, somebody owes a tax bill that eventually
That's
gets
one
collected.
brand of government. The IRS doesn't forget.
No.
Towns is done.
No.
Yeah.
We also, and of course, that money gets invested by the treasurer. We pursue delinquent taxpayers through the tax taking process, and we're in the middle of that now for fiscal 17 taxes. Borrowing, we just had money came in yesterday for the Franklin High School project. That's still ongoing. We're waiting for the reimbursement money from the SBA.
MSBA. That's an interesting example,
It
right?
is.
Because a lot, the school's been open, beautiful facility, kids are
2014,
happy,
right?
teachers are, everyone's happy it's been there, but a lot of folks don't, realize it. Probably nor should they. Kids go to the school, it's great. We're still closing out the books on this. We still haven't gotten our final payment from the MSBA. The audit, is required by law.
Trying to get onto their agenda.
Trying to get onto the MSBA agenda. So if the MSBA, if you're watching at home, please get us on the agenda as soon as possible so we can really wrap this up.
Right.
But that goes into the debt schedule piece that, I've, as someone who's coming in as a newbie, you have a very simple but also very sophisticated way of managing the debt schedule. This is not an easy task,
No,
and
it's
this
not.
is something that your office does.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the debt schedule, just a tiny bit, just so we can
Jim,
hopefully not bore people at home.
and Jim doesn't speak about this when he talks about his accomplishments, but he really has perfected and created these Excel workbooks that that we can project the future and out, and that's very very, very important. So it takes a lot. It's a lot of time, and there's a lot to do, research and understanding and whatnot that we goes into this as we're taking payments for that day's tax bill. So it's Jim has to almost remove himself from that. But he doesn't. He still keeps, in the weeds and oh yeah, let me help the customers. Oh, let me answer the phone. The girls are busy, you know. So that's just that's what he's trained me to do. Not to get away from that topic, but just like you said, he's laid the foundation, and it's easier to go from bad to good.
Right.
It's going to be harder for me to go from good to even better.
Exactly.
That's a lot of pressure, but that's.
But we're up for the job.
We're up for the job, right? That's
I
what
want
I'm
to see
here.
her
That's
succeed.
Yes, and that's exactly how he's trained me, and it's been basically, Jim, everything that's in your brain, you have to say out loud so I can write it down.
That's right. And,
so I can hear it.
And we do this too with water and sewer infrastructure as well.
Yes.
That's right.
The enterprise.
And for the folks at home again, the debt service is important because that affects the operating budget of the community.
Yes.
And as everybody knows, Jeff has this great saying where we always should think outside. People say we should always think outside the box, right? And sure, we want to think creatively. We do that as part of our standard business practices. We always reevaluate costs. But on the other hand, we are constrained by law within a box.
Yep.
Yes.
We only go 2.5% every year. The taxpayers in this town have only once voted for an override, so they're telling us consistently over your tenure,
That's right.
work within your means of your budget, but yet we demand a high level of high quality facilities and services that are there. And so, this does, as you pointed out, even within the debt schedule, it's just one little piece of a bigger pie that we have to constantly be monitoring and coming up with creative ways to try to do that. And I think Jim alluded to that before about refinancing some of the issues to save $500,000 here on interest and whatnot. And so we've talked a lot about the great things that government does, and we've talked a lot of government talk. Is there, as we kind of wrap up, is there anything else that as you're retiring, Jim, that you want to mention, to either the community?
Somebody yesterday asked me, what's the hardest part of your job? And I told them it was sending a tax bill to myself. There's no hard part of the job. It's so enjoyable. I really enjoyed my 18 years. I look forward to getting up every morning and coming into work. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss the people. Interacting with the people in my office. I think we have a fun office.
We do. It's a great team. It is a really great team.
Good snacks.
Yeah. We have some great comedy back and forth. I think
we do.
Patty and I could make a comedy team someday.
Yes.
I'm sensing the headlining show at the Black Box Theater.
Yes. Right.
The Patty and Jim, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So maybe you get a second career afterwards. Well, I got to say personally for me, I've been in town almost a couple years now, and I've worked here. It's been an incredible pleasure working with you.
Well,
I think you've obviously taught me a tremendous amount, and you've been almost like her, a mentor figure. But I think one of the things that I've realized in Franklin, and I've said this to a lot of folks that I go around and talk to, this isn't political jargon. This is the truth. The town of Franklin is very, very fortunate to have a fantastic staff with a great sense of humor, committed to public service, committed to customer service, with a friendly face on it. And when you enjoy coming to work every day because you enjoy the people you're working for, it has a ripple effect, and I think it does create a nice brand of a really friendly community.
Correct.
This town is a very, very friendly place. The people have been very warm to me, even though I live a few towns out. But and I got to say, the staff have been fantastic. But Jim, you've really been a lot of fun to work with. You've taught me a lot. You've made me laugh quite a bit. You've told me some great stories.
Great stories, right? He should write a
And
book.
You
on
should
it.
write a book on this stuff. Maybe some of the other retirees, maybe Sue when she retires,
Oh.
maybe we'll start seeing the New York Times bestseller list out there. But it's been really great pleasure to work with you, and certainly always wish you the best in your retirement with your wife. And I know you won't be a stranger. I know we'll see you around here
We'll
soon.
be around. Yep.
It's been awesome.
Thank you, Jamie.
And Kerry, for you, obviously I look forward to working with
Yep.
you. Very excited to get into the nitty gritty,
Yep.
and very excited to try to become that great, which is going to be a huge challenge.
Yes.
Filling the shoes of both Jim and Sue Gagner, our
Yes.
comptroller who's retiring, and
Absolutely.
in addition with the rest of the staff. So I look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, so thank you very much for joining us today on this edition of Our Franklin, and we'll see you again very soon.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.